Everyone in the courtroom believed Elena Vasquez had already lost. Her father's empire was gone. The inheritance belonged to someone else. Even before the trial began, people whispered that she was only there because she couldn't accept reality. But they were wrong. Elena wasn't fighting for money. She was fighting for her father's last wish. The courtroom was crowded with reporters, business executives, and curious spectators. Everyone wanted to witness the final chapter of the Cole family fortune. When the doors opened, every conversation stopped. Elena walked inside wearing a simple navy suit. She carried only one brown folder. Beside her was her attorney, Diana Osei. Across the courtroom sat Patricia Cole, Richard Cole's widow, calm, elegant, and completely confident. Next to her sat Marcus Cole and the family's attorney, Gerald Whitmore. They looked like people who had already won. Patricia glanced at Elena and smiled. "She actually came," she whispered. Marcus shook his head. "This won't change anything." Elena ignored them. She placed the brown folder on the table and rested her hand on it. Inside were handwritten letters from her father. They were the only reason she still believed the truth would survive. A moment later, Judge Caldwell entered. Everyone stood. After the courtroom settled, he opened the case file. Cole Estate versus Vasquez Cole. The plaintiff challenges the validity of the submitted will. He looked toward Diana. "Counsel, you may begin." Diana stood. "Your Honor, Richard Cole spent 40 years building Cole Industries. He loved his company, but he loved his daughter even more. Yet only 3 weeks before his death, a new will suddenly appeared, a will that erased Elena completely." She paused. "We believe that document does not reflect Richard Cole's true wishes." She sat down. Gerald Whitmore rose immediately. "Your Honor, this case is based on grief, not facts." He held up the will. "This document was signed, witnessed, and legally filed. Richard Cole made a difficult decision, and the plaintiff simply refuses to accept it." He returned to his seat with complete confidence. The first witness was called. Leonard Birch, Richard Cole's estate attorney. After taking the oath, Gerald began questioning him. "Mr. Birch, did you prepare the October 14th will?" "Yes." "Did Richard Cole sign it willingly?" "He did." "Was he mentally capable of making that decision?" "Yes." "And according to that will, who inherited Cole Industries?" "Patricia Cole and Marcus Cole." "Was Elena Vasquez included?" Birch lowered his eyes. "No." Gerald smiled. No further questions. Diana slowly approached the witness. "Mr. Birch, before this document existed, was there another will?" Gerald stood. "Objection." Judge Caldwell looked at Diana. "Why is it relevant?" "Because if Richard Cole had a previous estate plan, this court deserves to know whether his intentions truly changed." The judge nodded. "Overruled." Diana faced the witness again. "Answer the question." Birch hesitated before speaking. "Yes, there was another will." "Who prepared it?" "Our firm." "And who was named as the primary beneficiary?" The courtroom became completely silent. Finally, Birch answered. "Elena Vasquez." A wave of whispers spread through the gallery. Only moments earlier, everyone believed Richard Cole had intentionally cut his daughter out of his life. Now they learned she had once been chosen to inherit everything. Diana asked one final question. "Mr. Birch, did Richard Cole ever personally tell you that he no longer loved his daughter?" Birch looked down. "No." "Did he ever tell you he wanted to punish her?" "No." "Then can you explain why a father who planned to leave everything to his daughter suddenly erased her 3 weeks before his death?" Birch remained silent. He had no answer. For the first time that morning, Patricia's confident smile disappeared. Elena looked at the brown folder in front of her. She knew the letters inside were only the beginning. Somewhere behind the lies, her father's real voice was still waiting to be heard. Marcus Cole was the next witness. He walked to the stand with calm confidence. Unlike the state attorney, he showed no hesitation. He believed he was telling the truth, or at least the truth he had accepted for years. After taking the oath, Gerald Whitmore stepped forward. "Marcus, how would you describe your father's relationship with Elena during his final year?" Marcus glanced at Elena before answering. They barely spoke. Did your father seem disappointed in her? Yes. Why? He believed she no longer cared about the family or the company. Gerald nodded. Did Elena ever tell your father she wanted nothing to do with coal industries? She did. And how did Richard Cole react? He was heartbroken. The courtroom grew quiet. Gerald looked toward the judge. So your father changed his will because he believed his daughter had abandoned him? Yes. No further questions. Patricia leaned back with a satisfied expression. Everything was going exactly as planned. Diana stood and slowly approached Marcus. Marcus, was the last private conversation you personally heard between Richard Cole and Elena? Marcus frowned. I don't remember. So you never actually heard my client reject her father? No. You testified that Richard Cole felt abandoned. Did he tell you that himself? Marcus hesitated. He didn't use those exact words. Then where did that belief come from? Marcus looked toward Patricia. My mother told me. A murmur spread through the courtroom. Diana didn't react. So your testimony is based partly on what Patricia Cole told you? Yes. She nodded. No further questions. Marcus stepped down, but his confidence was gone. Diana turned toward the judge. Your Honor, the plaintiff would like to submit communication records between Richard Cole and Elena Vasquez. The judge nodded. Proceed. Phone records appeared on the courtroom screen. Diana addressed Elena. How often did you speak with your father? Every Sunday. For how many years? More than 20. The courtroom watched as page after page showed the same pattern. Weekly calls, without interruption, even 3 days before Richard Cole died. Diana looked at the judge. These records directly contradict the claim that Elena abandoned her father. Gerald stood. Phone calls don't prove they had a loving relationship. Diana calmly replied, perhaps not, but they certainly prove they never stopped talking. The objection was denied. Diana walked back to Elena. Did you also visit your father? I tried. What do you mean? I requested visits almost every month. Did those visits happen? Most of them didn't. Why? Elena took a slow breath. Because Patricia kept refusing them. Diana immediately submitted another exhibit. A series of emails appeared on the screen, request after request. Every response delayed or denied. Mr. Cole isn't available. Please try again next week. Mrs. Cole has declined today's visit. The pattern continued for months. The gallery became silent. Diana faced the judge. These emails show that Elena repeatedly tried to see her father, but someone prevented those meetings. Patricia's expression hardened. For the first time, she looked uncomfortable. Diana reached into the brown folder. Elena, what have you carried into this courtroom since the first day? My father's letters. How many? 47. Another wave of whispers filled the room. Diana carefully removed one letter. The final letter was written just 8 weeks before Richard Cole died. She handed it to the judge. Judge Caldwell quietly read several lines before looking up. Diana spoke. Would you please read the highlighted sentence into the record? The judge nodded. You are the future of coal industries. Elena, I've already made sure the papers reflect what I know to be true. Silence filled the courtroom. Every eye turned toward Patricia. If Richard Cole believed he had already protected his daughter, then why did another will appear weeks later? Diana asked one final question. Elena, after receiving that letter, did you ever believe your father planned to disinherit you? She shook her head. Never. Why? Because he spent his entire life keeping his promises. Diana slowly closed the folder. No further questions. Judge Caldwell looked around the courtroom. The case had changed. What had started as a dispute over money was becoming something much more serious. Someone in that courtroom was lying, and for the first time, the evidence suggested it wasn't Elena. Diana remained standing. Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Elena Vasquez. Elena walked to the witness stand. Every camera in the courtroom followed her. She took the oath and sat down, her hands resting calmly on the wooden rail. Diana smiled reassuringly. Elena, did you love your father? More than anyone. When was the last time you saw him? October 14th. The same date on the disputed will? Yes. Where did you see him? At St. Mary's Hospital. The courtroom became quiet. Diana looked at the judge. Your Honor, we'd like to submit Richard Cole's hospital records into evidence. Gerald Whitmore stood immediately. Objection. We haven't verified these records. The records come directly from the hospital. Diana replied. Their authenticity has already been confirmed. Judge Caldwell nodded. Objection overruled. The clerk handed copies to the judge. Diana continued. Elena, why was your father in the hospital? He suffered a cardiac episode that morning. What time was he admitted? 9:47 a.m. And how long did he remain there? Until the following afternoon. Diana walked toward the jury box. The defendants claim Richard Cole signed a new will at 2 o'clock that afternoon inside a law office. She paused. The hospital records show he was still in his room at that exact time. A wave of whispers spread across the courtroom. Gerald quickly stood. There may be an error in the hospital records. Diana calmly shook her head. There isn't. She displayed another document. Nursing notes recorded at exactly 2:03 p.m. She read aloud. Patient resting. Blood pressure stable. Daughter present in room. Then she looked directly at Gerald. If Richard Cole was lying in a hospital bed at 2 o'clock, who signed the will? No one answered. Judge Caldwell turned toward Leonard Birch. Mr. Birch, are you certain the will was signed at your office that afternoon? The attorney looked nervous. That was my understanding. Did you personally watch Richard Cole sign every page? Birch hesitated. I saw the completed document. So you did not actually witness him writing his signature? The courtroom became completely silent. No. Gerald lowered his head. His strongest witness had just changed his testimony. Diana returned to Elena. Did your father ever mention changing his will while you sat beside him in the hospital? No. What did he say? Elena smiled sadly. He asked if I was eating enough. A few people in the gallery smiled. He told me not to worry. He squeezed my hand. And before I left, he said, her voice cracked, everything will be okay. The courtroom fell silent again. Diana allowed a few seconds to pass. Then she spoke. Your Honor, based on a conflicting timeline, the plaintiff requests an immediate forensic examination of the signature on the October 14th will. Judge Caldwell looked toward Gerald. Do you object? Gerald took a deep breath. We request additional time. Request denied. The judge struck his gavel lightly. This court orders an independent forensic handwriting examination. Proceedings will resume tomorrow morning. The courtroom recessed. Outside, reporters surrounded both legal teams. Patricia ignored every question and walked straight toward her car. Elena stood quietly beside Diana. You think today changed anything? Elena asked. Diana nodded. Everything. Before Elena could reply, Patricia approached them. Her voice was low. You should stop now. Elena looked at her. The truth always comes out. Patricia smiled coldly. Truth doesn't matter. Power does. Elena stepped closer. My father believed differently. Patricia's expression hardened. You have no idea what you're doing. No, Elena replied. I think you know exactly what I'm doing. Patricia turned without another word and walked away. The next morning, the courtroom was even more crowded than before. Everyone had heard about the hospital records. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Could Richard Cole's signature be fake? At exactly 9 o'clock, Judge Caldwell entered. The courtroom stood. The forensic examiner walked through the doors carrying a sealed report. Diana watched silently. Gerald stared at the envelope. Patricia's hands tightened beneath the table. The expert placed the report before the judge. Judge Caldwell opened it slowly. He read the first page. Then he looked up. His expression had completely changed. The court has received the preliminary findings. He paused. The signature on the October 14th will... The entire courtroom held its breath. Does not appear to have been written by Richard Cole. Silence. Then dozens of shocked voices erupted at once. The case had just turned into something far bigger than an inheritance dispute. It was now a criminal fraud investigation. The courtroom exploded with whispers. Judge Caldwell struck his gavel. Order. I will have order. Slowly, the room became silent again. The forensic examiner, Dr. Susan Park, walked to the witness stand. She placed several reports on the table before taking the oath. Diana approached her first. Dr. Park, please tell the court your profession. I'm a certified forensic document examiner with 23 years of experience. Were you asked by this court to examine the signature on the October 14th will? Yes. What was your conclusion? Dr. Park looked at the report. The signature was not written naturally. It showed signs of slow tracing and deliberate imitation. Diana nodded. In simple terms, it was forged. A loud gasp echoed through the courtroom. Patricia closed her eyes for a brief second. Marcus stared at the table in disbelief. Diana continued. Did you compare it with authentic samples of Richard Cole's handwriting? I compare it with 47 verified documents. And how many matched the signature on the disputed will? None. So, in your professional opinion, who signed that will? I cannot identify the person, but I can state with a high degree of certainty that it was not Richard Cole. The courtroom erupted again. Judge Caldwell struck the gavel harder. One more interruption, and I'll clear the gallery. Silence returned. Gerald Whitmore stood for cross-examination. Dr. Park, could illness have changed Mr. Cole's handwriting? No. What about medication? No. Stress? No. She looked directly at him. Illness changes handwriting. It does not transform one person's signature into someone else's. Gerald knew there was nothing more to ask. He quietly returned to his seat. Diana called her next witness, Thomas Wren, a forensic accountant. After taking the oath, Wren opened several financial records. Mr. Wren, were you asked to examine Cole Industries' financial transactions? Yes. What did you discover? $9 million was transferred from company accounts into a private company 8 months before Richard Cole died. The courtroom became silent again. Diana asked the question everyone was waiting for. Who owned that company? Wren answered without hesitation. Patricia Cole. Every head turned toward Patricia. She remained perfectly still. Diana continued. Were those transfers approved by the company's board? No. Was there any written authorization from Richard Cole? No. So these transfers violated company policy? They did. Gerald quickly stood. Those funds could have been legitimate business expenses. Wren calmly shook his head. I reviewed every transaction. There were no invoices, no contracts, no board approval. The money simply disappeared. Marcus slowly looked toward his mother. His face showed complete confusion. It was obvious. He had never heard about the missing money. Diana noticed immediately. She walked toward the defendant's table. Mrs. Cole, did your son know about these transfers? Gerald jumped to his feet. Objection. Sustained. Judge Caldwell replied. Diana nodded and returned to her seat. She had already achieved what she wanted. Everyone in the courtroom had seen Marcus's reaction. Even he looked shocked. The judge looked at Patricia. Mrs. Cole, you are reminded that you remain under oath if called to testify. Patricia simply nodded. The judge turned back to the courtroom. So far, this court has heard evidence of a forged signature, impossible timelines, and unauthorized financial transfers. He paused. The seriousness of these allegations cannot be overstated. Court recessed for lunch. As people filed out, reporters rushed to broadcast the latest developments. Outside the courtroom, Marcus stood alone. He wasn't speaking to his mother. He wasn't speaking to Gerald. He stared at the courthouse steps as if everything he believed about his family had just fallen apart. Across the street, Elena noticed him. He didn't know, she quietly said. Diana nodded. I don't think he did. You think he'll help us? Diana watched Marcus for a moment. People who discover they've been lied to usually have two choices. They protect the lie, or they tell the truth. Elena looked back toward the courthouse. Something told her the trial wasn't over. The strongest witness had not yet spoken, and before this case ended, someone sitting at the defendant's table would change everything. Marcus Cole didn't go home that evening. Instead, He sat alone inside a quiet diner a few blocks from the courthouse, staring at a cup of untouched coffee. The testimony replayed in his mind again and again. The forged signature, the missing $9 million, the hospital records. None of it matched the story his mother had told him. An hour later, Diana Ose walked into the diner. She sat across from him without saying a word. Marcus finally broke the silence. "I didn't know." Diana nodded. "I believe you." He looked exhausted. "My mother told me my father changed the will because Elena abandoned him." "Did your father ever say that?" Marcus slowly shook his head. "No." "Then why did you believe it?" "Because she was my mother." The words carried years of regret. Diana leaned forward. "Marcus, I need the truth. Not for Elena. For your father." Marcus looked out the window. "I remember something." "What?" "The week before Dad died, a notary came to the house." Diana listened carefully. "My mother took Dad into his study. They stayed there about 20 minutes. What happened after?" Dad walked out looking confused. Marcus paused. He wasn't himself. "Did he say anything?" Marcus closed his eyes, trying to remember. Only one sentence. "What was it?" "Make sure Elena gets the letters." Diana froze. "Are you certain?" Marcus nodded. "I've never forgotten those words." Diana's mind immediately connected the pieces. "The letters." Marcus continued. "There was something else. My father owned a safe. A private safe in the old garage. He told me about it years ago. What was inside? I don't know. He never opened it. But on my 18th birthday, he handed me a folded piece of paper." Marcus reached into his wallet. He carefully unfolded a worn slip of paper and placed it on the table. "It's the combination." Diana looked at it in disbelief. "Why are you giving this to me now?" Marcus lowered his head. "Because I think this is what my father wanted." That night, Diana and Elena met Marcus at the Cole family estate. The old garage had remained untouched for years. Behind shelves covered with dust stood a heavy steel safe. Marcus entered the combination. Nothing happened. He took a deep breath and tried again. A loud click echoed through the garage. The safe slowly opened. Inside were several folders, a leather journal, and one large sealed envelope. Across the front, written in Richard Cole's unmistakable handwriting, were 6 words. "Last will and testament. Richard Cole." No one spoke. Elena stared at the envelope with tears in her eyes. "My father—" Diana carefully lifted it. The seal was still intact. "It has never been opened." Marcus stepped back. "I spent years believing the wrong person." Elena looked at him. "You believed your mother." "I betrayed Dad." "No," Elena replied softly. "You were deceived too." The next morning, the courtroom was overflowing. News of the forged signature had spread across the country. Every seat was occupied. Judge Caldwell entered, and the room immediately fell silent. Diana stood. "Your Honor, the plaintiff has discovered new evidence." Gerald Whitmore immediately objected. "This evidence was never disclosed." "It was discovered only last night," Diana answered. Judge Caldwell looked toward her. "What exactly have you found?" Diana held up the sealed envelope. It was recovered from Richard Cole's personal safe. She paused. The safe was opened using the combination Mr. Cole personally gave to Marcus Cole years before his death. Every eye turned toward Marcus. Patricia's face lost all color. For the first time since the trial began, she looked terrified because she recognized the handwriting on that envelope, and she knew exactly what was inside. Diana carefully placed the sealed envelope on the evidence table. The courtroom was so quiet that no one seemed willing to breathe. Judge Caldwell adjusted his glasses. "Has this document been authenticated?" "Yes, Your Honor," Diana replied. "The envelope, the handwriting, and the seal have all been examined by Dr. Susan Park. They match Richard Cole's verified handwriting." The judge nodded. "Bring it forward." The bailiff carried the envelope to the bench. Gerald Whitmore stood immediately. "Your Honor, we object. We request additional time to examine this document." Judge Caldwell looked directly at him. "You've already had ample opportunity to defend the will presented by your clients. The court will review this evidence." Gerald slowly sat down. Patricia's hands were trembling beneath the table. She never imagined this envelope still existed. Judge Caldwell carefully examined the seal. It appears unopened. Dr. Park stepped forward. I can confirm the seal has never been broken. The judge looked across the courtroom. This court will now open the document. Every person leaned forward. Judge Caldwell slowly broke the seal. He removed several neatly folded pages. The first page carried Richard Cole's signature. The second and third contained witness signatures. The final page listed the distribution of the estate. The judge silently read each page. As he continued reading, his expression changed. He looked toward Patricia, then toward Elena. Finally, he spoke. This document is dated September 2nd. He paused. It predates the disputed October 14th will by 6 weeks. The courtroom remained silent. Judge Caldwell continued reading. This will leave 100% of Cole Industries and Richard Cole's personal estate to his daughter, Elena Vasquez. A loud gasp swept through the gallery. Elena closed her eyes. Tears slowly rolled down her face. Judge Caldwell continued. There is also a separate personal bequest of $30 million to Marcus Cole. Marcus lowered his head. The judge smiled faintly as he read one handwritten note. This margin note states, Marcus was never my enemy. He simply trusted the wrong person. I hope one day he finds the courage to do what is right. Marcus covered his face. He could no longer hold back his emotions. Judge Caldwell turned another page. There is one final item. A sealed personal letter addressed to Patricia Cole. He looked toward her. This letter is private and forms no part of today's ruling. The bailiff carried the envelope to Patricia. She stared at it, but could not bring herself to open it. The courtroom remained completely silent. Judge Caldwell placed both wills side by side. The October 14th document has been proven inconsistent with hospital records. The signature has been determined to be forged. The original will has now been recovered from Richard Cole's personal safe. He looked directly at Gerald Whitmore. Accordingly, this court declares the October 14th will invalid. A wave of whispers filled the courtroom. Judge Caldwell raised his hand for silence. Furthermore, this matter is referred to the district attorney for investigation into forgery, fraud, and estate tampering. Patricia slowly stood. Your Honor, the judge interrupted her. You have the right to remain silent regarding any matter that may expose you to criminal liability. She slowly sat back down. For the first time in years, Patricia Cole had no control. Judge Caldwell signed the final order. Ownership of Cole Industries and all assets governed by the September 2nd were restored to Elena Vasquez. He struck the gavel. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff. The courtroom erupted. Reporters rushed toward the exits to break the story. Business executives whispered in disbelief. Marcus walked across the courtroom and stopped in front of Elena. His eyes were filled with regret. I'm sorry. Elena looked at him quietly. Our father never stopped believing in either of us. Marcus nodded through tears. And I finally understand why. As officers entered the courtroom to speak with Patricia and her attorney, Elena looked down at the original will. Her father had protected her all along. His voice had never disappeared. It had simply been waiting for the right moment and the right judge to finally be heard. In the days that followed, the courtroom verdict sent shockwaves through the business world. The district attorney immediately opened a criminal investigation into Patricia Cole's actions. Detectives seized financial records, company files, and electronic devices connected to the estate. Within days, the evidence became overwhelming. The forged will, the unauthorized transfers, the hidden accounts. One by one, every piece of the truth surfaced. Gerald Whitmore agreed to cooperate with investigators. He admitted that Patricia had pressured him to process the new will, insisting Richard Cole wanted everything completed before his health declined further. He claimed he never knew the signature was forged. Whether anyone believed him was another matter. Investigators also searched the financial records of Cole Industries. The missing $9 million was only the beginning. For years, money had quietly moved through shell companies and private accounts controlled by Patricia. Millions of dollars had been hidden from shareholders and from Richard himself. Every new discovery made the case even larger. Patricia Cole was arrested on charges of forgery, fraud, estate tampering, and financial crimes. She walked out of her home, surrounded by reporters, but refused to answer a single question. The woman who once controlled every conversation now remained completely silent. Meanwhile, Cole Industries called an emergency board meeting. For the first time, Elena entered the building not as a visitor, but as its rightful owner. Many board members had worked beside Richard Cole for decades. When Elena entered the conference room, they quietly stood to welcome her. No one spoke. They didn't need to. They already knew Richard's final decision. Elena thanked them before taking her father's seat at the head of the table. She looked around the room. "My father built this company with trust," she said. "We're going to rebuild it the same way." The board unanimously confirmed her as the company's new chief executive officer. Outside the meeting, Diana was waiting. "You did it," she said with a smile. Elena shook her head. "My father did. I just kept believing him." Later that afternoon, Marcus asked Elena if they could talk. They met outside the company's original headquarters. Marcus looked exhausted. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said quietly. "I only want to tell you the truth. I believed everything Mom told me. I should have questioned it." Elena looked at him for a long moment. "Our father never blamed you." Marcus nodded. "I know. I read his note 100 times." He looked toward the building carrying their father's name. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life earning it." Elena placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then start today." Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. They were not the family they once were, but they were finally standing on the same side. As Elena left the building that evening, she looked up at the words carved above the entrance. Cole Industries. For years, she believed those words had been stolen from her. Now she understood something her father had tried to teach her all along. An inheritance isn't only money. It is truth. It is character. And sometimes justice arrives only after someone finds the courage to fight for both. 6 months later, Cole Industries had become stronger than ever. The company had recovered from the scandal. Employees who once feared losing everything now believed in the future again. New investments were creating jobs. Old debts had been cleared, and trust had slowly returned. Elena never tried to become another Richard Cole. She simply tried to protect everything he had built. The first thing visitors noticed when they entered the headquarters was a framed photograph of Richard standing inside the small garage where Cole Industries had begun. It reminded everyone that great companies aren't built by money alone. They're built by honesty, hard work, and courage. One afternoon, Diana walked into Elena's office carrying 2 cups of coffee. "I have some news," she said. Elena smiled. "Good news, I hope." Diana nodded. Patricia accepted a plea agreement. 11 years in prison. Elena looked out the window. She didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. After everything that had happened, revenge no longer mattered. Justice did. A few days later, Marcus invited Elena to the opening ceremony of the Richard Cole Foundation. Using the inheritance their father had left him, Marcus created a foundation to help young entrepreneurs build businesses the right way. During the ceremony, a reporter asked him why he had donated so much of his inheritance. Marcus smiled before answering. "Because my father taught me that the greatest legacy isn't what you leave your children. It's the values you leave inside them." Elena felt tears fill her eyes. For the first time in years, she saw the brother her father had always believed he could become. That evening, Elena drove to the old garage where Cole Industries had started. Nothing had changed. The wooden workbench was still there. The old tools still hung on the wall. And in the corner stood the empty safe that had protected her father's final wish. She gently placed her hand on it. If you hadn't hidden the truth here, they would have stolen everything. She opened the brown folder she had carried into court on the very first day. Inside was her father's final letter. She quietly read the last sentence one more time. "Never let someone else's lies decide who you are. One day, the truth will speak for itself." Elena carefully folded the letter and smiled. "I've got it from here, Dad." She turned off the lights, locked the old garage, and walked toward her car. As she drove away, the evening sun reflected across the building that had started it all. Richard Cole's greatest inheritance was never his fortune. It was the truth. A truth that survived lies, survived betrayal, and waited patiently until justice finally gave it a voice. If the story stayed with you, remember this: the truth may be delayed, but it is never defeated. And justice may take time, but when it finally arrives, it changes everything. If you enjoy powerful courtroom dramas filled with shocking betrayals, hidden evidence, emotional twists, and unforgettable verdicts, subscribe to the channel. Every week, we bring you stories where the truth refuses to stay buried. The innocent finally find justice, and every verdict reminds us that lies never win forever. Thank you for watching. Until the next case, remember one thing: the truth always finds its way into Courtroom.